Today, we're tackling one of the most complex and influential stories in world history, the epic, sprawling, and often revolutionary history of France. So let's get right into it. We're going to unpack the turbulent, transformative, and frankly, fascinating story of France, a nation that seems to be constantly shattered, reforged, and reinvented through conquest, revolution, and war.
Here's the journey we're going to take. We'll move through 6 distinct eras, following the thread from ancient cave dwellers all the way to France's central role in modern Europe. So let's begin.
All right, our story starts not with a king or some epic battle, but with the very first people to call this land home, and the empire that would eventually unite it for the first time. Just think about this timeline for a second. We're going from some of humankind's earliest, breathtaking art in the caves of Lascaux to Greek trading posts on the coast, and then to the real game changer for this early period, the Roman conquest. You see, Julius Caesar's Gallic Wars didn't just conquer a territory, they created a whole new Gallo-Roman society that laid the foundation for everything to come. But as Rome's power began to fade, a new power was waiting in the wings. And this right here is a pivotal moment. A Germanic tribe, the Franks, led by their very ambitious King Clovis, steps right into that power vacuum left by Rome. By uniting the region and, crucially, converting to Christianity, they forge a new dynasty and give the land its new name, Francia. Sound familiar? But hold on, just because it's called Francia doesn't mean it's a stable, unified kingdom. Not yet. It still had to be forged in a crucible of imperial ambition, foreign invasion, and some pretty slick political maneuvering. Notice the wild swings here. You have Charlemagne building this massive empire, basically trying to resurrect Rome, but it just can't hold together. It splinters. The western part, West Francia, is immediately hammered by Viking raiders. Now, in a brilliant move, the French king doesn't just fight them. He gives them land, creating Normandy, and makes them his vassals. Basically, you can have this land, but now you work for me. This whole period of chaos, though, it ends with a brand new beginning. With the old dynasty fizzled out, the nobles elect one of their own, Hugh Capet, as king. Now, from his pretty small power base around Paris, he and his descendants, the Capetians, would spend the next several centuries playing the long game, patiently, ruthlessly, and brilliantly expanding royal authority piece by piece. So, France is now a major power, but its greatest test was just around the corner. A conflict that would nearly destroy it, but in a strange way, would forge an even stronger sense of what it meant to be French. The 100 Years' War was this brutal existential struggle against England for the throne of France itself. Early on, it was an absolute disaster for the French, with crushing defeats like the one at Agincourt. The kingdom was honestly on the verge of collapse. And then, as if things couldn't possibly get any worse, an even deadlier threat arrived. The Black Death. 50%. Just let that number sink in for a moment. Imagine half of the entire population disappearing. It's a level of devastation that's almost impossible to comprehend, and it's happening right in the middle of this seemingly endless war. France was truly on its knees. So, with the kingdom shattered and its armies broken, where could a savior possibly come from? Incredibly, the answer was a teenage peasant girl. Joan of Arc appeared, claiming she was guided by God. She rallied the completely demoralized French army, shattered the English siege of Orleans, and just completely turned the tide of the war. Her inspiration forged a national spirit that ultimately drove the English out for good. Okay, so with the kingdom finally unified and secure, French royal power was about to go into overdrive. It reached its absolute peak in a dazzling display of glory that cast a very long and very dark shadow. Enter Louis XIV, the Sun King. He famously declared, "L'État, c'est moi," I am the state, and he absolutely meant it. He built the incredible Palace of Versailles, not just as a home, but as a gilded cage. He forced the powerful nobles to live there with him, caught up in complex court rituals instead of being out in the country plotting against him. He made French the language of culture all across Europe, but his constant wars and his religious intolerance came at a tremendous cost. So yeah, the Sun King's legacy was totally double-edged. He left France as the undisputed superpower of Europe, no question. But he also left it bankrupt and simmering with social and religious anger. The bill for all that glory was about to come due, big time. And this brings us to the moment where the old world is utterly shattered and a new, violent, and powerful idea of the French nation is born in fire and blood. By the late 1780s, you had a perfect storm brewing. The state was flat broke from all those wars. You had philosophers spreading these radical new ideas about rights and liberty. Society was cripplingly unequal. And on top of all that, people were literally starving. The system was about to break. And this really shows the fundamental shift they were aiming for. The revolution didn't just want to reform the old system, the ancien régime or the old rule. It wanted to completely annihilate it. It sought to replace that old world of monarchy and privilege with a new, radical trinity: liberty, equality, and fraternity. But the revolution, well, it started to devour its own. The chaos of the Reign of Terror and the guillotine created another one of those power vacuums, and into it stepped a brilliant young general, Napoleon Bonaparte. He promised stability after the chaos and glory after the bloodshed, and he harnessed the energy of the revolution to eventually crown himself emperor and build a French empire that dominated the continent. So after the incredible heights of Napoleon's empire, where does France go from here? Well, our final chapter sees France really struggling to find its footing, cycling through governments as it tried to square its revolutionary ideals with the need for some kind of stability. I mean, just look at this political roller coaster. After Napoleon's final defeat at Waterloo, the 19th century is a whirlwind. You've got a monarchy, then a revolution, then a republic, then an empire, and back again. France was desperately searching for a form of government that could actually last. And then the 20th century brought new, unimaginable horrors. France was on the winning side of 2 world wars, but the cost was immense, leaving the nation scarred and exhausted. This trauma, combined with the painful loss of its colonial empire, finally brought an end to the instability. In 1958, the wartime hero Charles de Gaulle established the strong, stable Fifth Republic that governs France to this day. And that brings us to the present. The nation that once tried to conquer Europe through the ambitions of its kings and emperors is now a cornerstone of the European Union, its destiny completely linked with that of its neighbors. It's an incredible story of resilience, isn't it? The history of France is defined by this constant, often violent transformation. From ancient Gaul to the EU, it has never stopped reinventing itself. And that leaves us with one final, big question as we look at the challenges of today. What great force will forge its next identity?